What's going on, guys? Carmine here, and welcome to another theory video. This time we'll be focusing on the Dornish Master plan, created by YouTuber and co-host of the Game of Thrones podcast, Preston Jacobs. Now, this theory is very old, almost 3 years, as of April 2017, and involves many characters' storylines removed or replaced in the HBO television show. This video does not contain spoilers for the show, but it does contain some from the books. However, if you're someone who has not read the books and plan to do so in the future, then I promise you this will not overly spoil your enjoyment. This video is also a prelude to the second episode of the Game of Thrones podcast, where we will discuss the Dornish Master plan in detail. But in this video, I will outline the basics of what you need to know and how most of this master plan comes together. Now, the Dornish Master plan is the grandiose scheme of Doran Martell in an attempt to destroy House Lannister and everybody associated with them who had a hand in killing Doran's sister, Elia. Doran has even said he hates Tywin and has worked towards his downfall ever since they told him of his sister's death. So Doran has been waiting for almost 20 years for the perfect opportunity to strike, and he is a patient man. But some see his patience as a weakness. In fact, in the Game of Thrones television show, Ellaria gets onto him about the fact that he does nothing while the Lannisters kill his family. In the books, however, he has been waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike at his enemies with lethal efficiency. Now, we're led to believe that Doran's master plan is to have his daughter, Arianne, marry Dany's brother Viserys, and his backup plan is to have his other son Quentyn marry Dany. However, if Doran is the careful planner that we're led to believe he is, then he wouldn't just rely on marriage proposals to take down the richest family in Westeros. He's got other things cooking up behind the scenes, and the War of Five Kings sets all this up perfectly. So first, let's start with the master plan's targets. Doran wants Tywin Lannister killed for ordering the death of his sister. He wants Amory Lorque and the Mountain killed for carrying out the deed, and he wants both Jaime and Cersei taken out because his plan also includes destroying all that Tywin holds dear, so they must suffer as well. Even King Tommen, who in the books is only 9 years old. But keep in mind that simple assassinations won't do. Sure, you could hire some random person to do it, but a quick death means nothing to Doran unless they suffer first. Also, their deaths need to mean something. For example, hiring someone to kill the Mountain in his sleep or poisoning his food means nothing unless the Mountain is able to confess before his death, and that requires careful planning. The Mountain needs to go down on Doran's terms. This will be difficult, but not impossible. And now that we have our targets, how will we go about in taking them out? What assets does Doran have? First, he has his brother Oberyn, whose resume would put many men to shame. Oberyn has traveled throughout Essos, learning about poisons and even dark magic. He has also studied at the Citadel, so he likely knows more than the average person, and he joined a mercenary company for a time before forming his own. Oberyn's background of poisons, religion, the Citadel, and his time in Essos seem to be in line with another mercenary company, the Brave Companions. Now, in the show, they are never introduced, but replaced with Roose Bolton's men. For example, in the books, the Brave Companions are responsible for Jaime losing his hand. In the show, this is carried out by House Bolton's best hunters. The Brave Companions are described as being a mix of men from all over the world, but when Jaime encounters them, he notices their diverse members as being mostly from Essos, and even some Dornishmen in the mix. Another one of their members includes Qyburn, who also seems to have connections in Dorne, Essos, and has studied at the Citadel, and knows quite a great deal about poisons and other dark arts. See, Preston's idea here is that the Brave Companions were formed by Oberyn himself when he spent time in Essos, gathering as many men as he could who shared his views and ideas, and once the plan starts to unfold, you'll get a better understanding. Because throughout the books, they do some weird things that any normal mercenary company would never do. For example, they were initially hired by the Lannisters to ravage the lands of their enemies, but eventually the group turn on the Lannisters and side with House Bolton, which makes no sense considering the Lannisters have more money than the Boltons do. What is the motivation here? It seems counterintuitive to being a group of people that fight for money to fight for the side that has less of it. What's even more weird is that they kill Amory Lorque and feed his body to a bear, which makes no sense considering Amory Lorque has lands and some amount of money. They could have held him prisoner and demanded cash for his return, yet they go out of their way to make sure he's killed and by a bear no less, which means there's no body to showcase to let people know not to mess with you. It's the whole point of putting heads on spikes outside your territory. Normally, when you want to be successful at being a mercenary company, there are two important things: money and reputation, and these guys apparently care nothing about those. Their actions make no sense unless they're working for someone with an ulterior motive. Amory Lorque is one of the people Tywin goes to carry out dirty deeds, and they made sure to dispose of him in a brutal way, and that means one of Doran's targets has been taken out. As for why Amory Lorque was killed by a bear and his remains possibly gone, well, if there were a body, then Tywin could try and pin the deaths of Doran's sister, Elia, on Amory Lorque, which Tywin does try to do, but because there is no body to present the Martells, then it makes Tywin's words meaningless. Pinning the death of Elia on a man who may or not be dead without proof would not give the Martells any comfort or appeasement. In fact, it would just piss them off even more that Tywin would try to make a claim without backing it up. So now we have this random mercenary company taking out one of Doran's targets. That doesn't mean they're actively working for the Martell's interests, right? Amory Lorque was a Lannister lackey, and when they switched sides, the only logical conclusion would be to kill the Lannister men. But here's where it starts to look a little suspicious. You see, eventually Brienne and Jaime run into them, and the leader, Vargo, orders Jaime's hand to be chopped off. Again, this makes no sense considering this is the son of Tywin Lannister. Tywin would pay an insane amount of money just to get his son back, and in one piece, but they just mutilated a prized asset. Again, we're shown that money means nothing to these guys, but this also works in Doran's favor once again. With Jaime's dominant hand now missing, he is worthless. All he has is the Lannister name. He is no longer a competent fighter, and his position in the Kingsguard becomes almost pointless. Roose Bolton is not even pleased about this, and it becomes clear that the brave companions are acting on their own. In fact, Roose orders them to go out and kill Lannister men in the area, but they spend most of the time destroying churches that belong to the faith. And they do this on a large scale, not just destroying one or two, but many, and it seems to cause a movement of holy men. In fact, when Brienne is traveling across the Riverlands to go find Sansa and Arya, she encounters the future High Sparrow and several other sparrows, and he tells her that they're marching to King's Landing to demand protection from the king. We're led to believe that the sacrilege of the brave companions caused the Sparrow movement. Now, as for Oberyn, who is still a crucial piece of Doran's plan, he heads to King's Landing with the intent of challenging the Mountain and making Tywin pay. Joffrey's wedding and the promise of a seat on the small council is a perfect excuse for Doran to send Oberyn in his stead. That way, Oberyn can carry out the bulk of the plan. Eventually, Oberyn does fight the Mountain and carry out some sense of justice for his sister, but he loses the fight and his life. But he could have won had he not done two things: slow the effects of the poison and demand a confession. You see, Manticore venom kills instantly when it reaches the heart, and Oberyn does manage to cut the Mountain several times, and yet nothing happened. He also demanded the Mountain confess to killing Elia. Oberyn is known for his skill and speed, and against the Mountain that is all you need, but Oberyn wanted him to confess before he was taken down. In fact, at various points during the fight, Oberyn had the Mountain on the ropes, but held back because he still needed that confession. However, Oberyn came prepared for every single scenario. See, he knew his speed and skill were enough, but on the off chance that he would lose, before a confession was made, he made sure that the Mountain would still die an agonizing death with the poison he used on his spear. Regardless of the outcome, the confession and the poison were crucial to the plan. But one question still remains: how did Oberyn know he would fight the Mountain? I mean, you can't just go there and demand to fight someone out of nowhere and expect that person to show up. Is Oberyn a lucky guy, that he somehow knew that Joffrey would be killed, and that Tyrion would be blamed and eventually fight for him as his champion? No. Oberyn went to King's Landing originally to kill Tywin with poison, and he intended to be caught and put on trial. He would then request a trial by combat so he could fight the Mountain and thereby take out both targets in one visit. In fact, it is believed that Oberyn did accomplish what he set out to do. When Tyrion confronts Tywin in the bathroom, it looks like Tywin had been there for quite some time because Shae, who was in Tywin's room, had been asleep. Tyrion also notes that Tywin didn't look so good, almost like he drank some poisoned wine himself. So how do we know that Tywin had been poisoned? Well, during Tyrion's trial, Grand Maester Pycelle is accusing him of stealing some of his own poisons, and he describes one of them called Widow's Blood, which causes death by constipation. So even if Tyrion didn't kill Tywin in the end with the crossbow, Tywin would have died eventually. So now that Tywin and the Mountain are dead, who gets to examine their bodies? Qyburn, who, if you'll recall, was a member of the Brave Companions, and is also a major part of the Master Plan. You see, Qyburn gained Cersei's trust because he was the one that healed Jaime. She also relies on him to deal with Tywin's death and to work in secret for her benefit by examining the Mountain's body to learn of what magic Oberyn used in prolonging the poison's effect. Qyburn eventually gets onto the small council by Cersei's invite and advises her on a variety of matters, such as having Jon Snow killed after he becomes Lord Commander, and more information on the Mag of the Frog prophecy, who he believes used blood magic. He even offers to dispose of Cersei's allies and enemies in an effort to expand his experiments. So you get the idea that Qyburn has become close enough to Cersei that he's one of her most trusted allies. Or is he? Now this is where the plan comes together. The Brave Companions basically created the Sparrow movement, and from that the Sparrows head to King's Landing to ensure they're protected by the king. When they get there, they basically take over the minds of the small folk and put in place their own religious leader, the High Sparrow. Eventually, when Cersei is arrested, she should be okay because no matter which charge they throw at her, she can counter with trial by combat. She has one of the best fighters in the continent by her side, right? Wrong. The brave companions made sure that Jaime would lose all fighting ability when they captured and mutilated him. Qyburn then comes in and offers to make Cersei a new champion, Robert Strong, aka the Zombie Mountain, and the creation of this monster is all due to Oberyn's poison that just wouldn't let him die. But the mountain has to die. During the fight with Oberyn, he confessed to killing Elia Martell, so Cersei had no choice but to have Qyburn send the Martells the mountain's head. Qyburn does this, but he has the flesh from the head removed, and when it arrives in Dorne, the Martells are obviously suspicious of whether or not this is the mountain's head. Oberyn's daughter Nymeria is quick to call out the bullshit on this and says, "No one saw the mountain die, and no one saw his head removed. That troubles me, I confess. But what could the bitch queen hope to accomplish by deceiving us? If Gregor Clegane is alive, sooner or late the truth will come out. The man was 8 feet tall. There's not another like him in all of Westeros. If any such appears again, Cersei Lannister will be exposed as a liar before all the 7 kingdoms." Nymeria here implies that Cersei is the one trying to deceive them, but what if this his decision to strip the mountain's flesh was all Qyburn's doing? And if he is an agent of Doran Martell, then he would follow Cersei's orders, but do so that Martells would not receive the peace and justice they want. By sending in a random large skull, they would not know if this is the mountain, and therefore no peace between the Lannisters and Martell will come. But Nymeria mentioned the mountain's height, and she's right. The guy was 8 feet tall, and if someone like that ever appears again, then they'll know Cersei is a liar. And as it turns out, Cersei is a liar, all thanks to Qyburn, because her new champion is as tall as he was, and always wears his armor. If you were trying to hide someone's identity in plain sight, then that's probably how it would be done. So to recap, we have Oberyn's very own mercenary company, the Brave Companions, mutilating Jaime, killing Amory Lorch, and causing religious turmoil in the country. We have Qyburn gaining Cersei's trust, but actively working against her interests. And we have Oberyn taking out Tywin in the mountain. Keep in mind that the master plan goes deeper than this, and there are more elements to it, such as religion, history, Dornish law, and even dragons. And we'll be discussing all of these in the next episode of the Game of Thrones podcast, so look forward to that. Now, this isn't an official announcement, and I want to do a separate video for this, but if you're a fan of this channel and of the Game of Thrones podcast, and you'd like to support me, then consider supporting us on Patreon. Once again, I'll have a separate video on this in the future, but for $1, you get everything, including exclusive audio from the podcast that were cut due to time constraints, and much more. So if you like what I do and you want to support my channel, then head on over to patreon.com/redteamreview for more info. Guys, thank you so much for watching and supporting the channel. Be sure to hit that like button and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time. Baba Booey.